Welcome to Empyrion Galactic Survival. I'm your host, ProbabilityOfSuccessZero, and this is episode 17 in our workshop series where I review creations of my own as well as creations of other users. Now, in this particular episode, we will be reviewing a new fighter design for early gameplay called the Cranefly. So here it is. So the kind of design concept behind this fighter is to make it very capable very early on in the game. One of the things I've seen with a lot of early kind of game fighters or just small SVs is the fact that they tend to be quite fragile. They tend to be quite small frames. They don't have many spots for upgrades. And what I wanted was something that was very, very capable at a very low level and was fairly compact enough but expansive enough that I could do upgrades to it without having to take the entire airframe apart. Now, I'm pretty sure I've sort of got that done with this design. Now, let's just go into God mode. I'll just give you a quick view on top. Now, this design actually features not one, not two, not three, but 4 Gatling cannons. Now, 3 of which are player controlled. The 4th one is actually controlled by the AI, which is a turret which is situated underneath the main body. Now, you can see at the minute we've got a Gatling turret under this kind of wing section just here under the main body, and an all Gatling cannon under that part of the body as well, and a Gatling cannon at the front. Yes, that is a medium engine facing straight out the front of the frame. That is there on purpose to provide retro thrust. I've got no problems with it being there. It performs quite well because of that. At the rear of the fighter, we've got 4 medium engines, 2 of which are slants, 2 of which are kind of like exposed, and we've got 2 medium engines on top as well, providing downward thrust. Now, in the middle of that, you'll see a little kind of vent hatch, and that is actually a small engine that's also providing downward thrust from above. On the sides, we've got 3 small engines just behind the cockpit on both sides of the design, and underneath we've got 4 engines under the main body under each of the wings. So we've got in groups of 2, so we've got 2 engines there, 2 engines there. These are small engines as well, and they provide the upward thrust so that we can stay in the air. Now, there is something particularly interesting about this design, and I didn't realise it until I was test flying it yesterday, and it is something quite interesting. I can technically fly this with nothing more than rear thrust, and it will not crash to the ground. It has enough rear thrust and enough aerodynamic lift just from the main body as well as the wings that it technically doesn't need the thrusters underneath to keep it in the air. These thrusters here are actually redundant. The only reason I'm keeping them in there is obviously in space we don't have aerodynamics, so we do need to provide some kind of upwards and downwards thrust capability. That goes for the same left and right engines as well. So I was able to kind of do, before I put these kind of docking feet on, I was able to do a quite successful runway takeoff and a runway landing procedure using just the rear engines and all the air brakes switched off. So it was just rear thrust, and I was able to control the height as well as the elevation. Effectively, I could drop speed, which would then drop the aerodynamic profile of the vehicle so that I could actually bring it gradually down to the ground for a soft landing. which I thought was very interesting, and quite the opposite as well. You could actually take off the vehicle from a standing start by providing rearward thrust, and that, combined with the aerodynamic frame of the craft, would actually lift it off the ground and it would fly away and keep elevating up to the sky just on rear thrust. So no touching of the keyboard, no elevating of the nose, it did it itself, just natural lift, which I thought was very interesting. I've not had a vehicle that's done that before, so that is something I thought was particularly cool. Now, covering more details about the vehicle, we've obviously got the standard kind of detection dome on top. I've done a bit of decoration as well. I think the decoration's gone quite well. It's looking quite nice. Underneath it's pretty minimal, so we've got some air intakes as well as some piping. I've done a lot of texturing around the actual engine segments just here to make it look very kind of technical. You'll see I've done similar up here. I've also done quite a few internal configurations. So at the minute, this vehicle, let's make sure it is actually grouped. Yeah, so everything's pretty standard. We've got an ammo box in there. That ammo box has a 500 capacity. That carries a lot of ammo. The reason being is obviously we've got 4 guns to theoretically feed. That is a hell of a lot of ammo that we'll potentially be getting through. The second storage chest on there is actually this one underneath, and this is 375 storage. That is actually located on the underside of the vehicle. That everything can be accessed obviously from the P menu, so we can do that, and that's the controller for that. That's perfectly fine. I've got no RCSs in this whatsoever. All the aerodynamics and the turning is provided by the engines and the wings. So at the minute, these are the figures that we've got, which I think are fairly reasonable for what we've got in it. Now, we've got quite a lot of thrust going back, so about 1.5 seconds to get up to maximum thrust from a standing start. Deacceleration is pretty slow. That's because we've only got one forward facing engine, 4:1. Up and down, so obviously we've got more down thrust than we have up thrust, and so that should be the other way around, shouldn't it? So yeah, thrust that elevates us is more than the thrust that would push us down. And we've got equal thrust going left and right, which is actually quite high, to be fair, and that'll be down to the 3 engines there and the 2 medium engines under the main body stroke wing segments here. Now, as you can see, we've got 3 docking feet as well. These are late additions to the design. These are to allow you to dock it to things. Now, before I wasn't actually including them as part of the design because I wanted it to be able to do this kind of runway takeoff as well as landing, but obviously people will be plonking this on other things. I'm hoping it doesn't fall off, so docking feet are kind of required. Now, in terms of its affordability, it is fairly cheap. There's nothing particularly outlandish about those figures there. Pretty much a single deposit of materials, the most expensive being the copper. Single deposit, smallish to medium sized deposit will get you most of those materials. In terms of its weight, it's only 12.6 tons. It's a fairly small frame, only 10 by 10 meters effectively by 3 height. What else? It only has 1 generator. I have done a power test and that should be sufficient to power the entire vehicle. There are no CPU extenders in. The CPU is bang on 6000. Yes, we nailed 6000, guys, on the dot. absolutely on the dot. Right, so we cannot fit anything more into this vehicle. It is maxed out for tier 1 CPU usage, and I think it's fairly capable for that. So we've got 2 air tanks, we've got 2 fuel tanks, these are the small ones, and that's about it for the internal system. So let's just give it a bit of a test flight then. So we'll bring up the hood. We should have plenty of fuel, and we'll just top that up. Power up, get in the air. So we've got a good 260-ish to 280-ish minutes of fuel. Oxygen, yeah, you're not going to run out of oxygen anytime soon. If we switch the weapons off, I'd imagine that goes up a fair bit. Yep, that goes up by nearly 100 minutes. So yeah, as you can see, even when it's powering forward, about anywhere from 334 to 180 minutes of fuel. So you got plenty of runtime in this thing. The only downside to this is some of the turning is a bit more difficult. It is a bit heavy on the turns, but then again it is carrying a hell of a lot in terms of armaments for its size and capabilities, so you will suffer a little bit for that. However, one consequence of that is if you switch it over to pilot mode on the mouse, it actually becomes a lot more easier to handle. As you can see, the turn is pretty good if you're banking, just like a real fighter. And you can always use the left and right thrusters or the rear thrust, the up and down thrusters to provide a bit more thrust in a particular direction if you need it. So turning just using the downwards thrust. That's not really working, is it? I was doing this earlier, it was working. Was it that? Yeah, left and right thrust to kind of spin it around faster. Yeah, so the idea behind this is you can do good, decent recon. It is atmospheric as well as space capable. It should be capable of getting you to other orbital objects, so that shouldn't be a problem. By orbital objects, I mean things within the same sector, obviously. It has no warp drive. Let's just do the glide test. So we're just going to turn this off. Yeah, it doesn't glide very far because it's quite weighty. And now it's not to full. Let's check out the guns. So 3 guns, good position. Let's just find something to shoot at. Better put them out first. Reloading. And let's fire. Trees be afraid. Yeah, that's very capable. Now if you combine that with the Gatling cannon, which technically does more damage, and you're doing flyovers of an enemy POI just on a scouting run, yeah, you've got fairly good protection there, and potentially you could be using this fighter to go in and strike at those positions as well. It is coated in standard steel. It's nothing fancy. Originally the design was carbon, I decided to switch it out for steel for extra protection. That's obviously diminished some of the maneuverability and agility. Now, as you can see, it's fairly responsive. Even with the rear thrust, it's still responsive. Up thrust is fine, down thrust is fine, left and right thrust perfect. And there we go, landed easily. So, is there anything more to cover? I don't believe so. Production time is 32 minutes 12 seconds. I think that's pretty reasonable for its size. I will be obviously having a look at the design, seeing if there's any areas of improvement that I could potentially do. In terms of its exterior, I think it looks pretty good. I do like its shape. I think it looks quite stylish, very different to some of my other designs. It's more kind of traditional sci-fi kind of space fighter jet shape, rather than kind of like stealth fighter plane design like I've been doing with a lot of my designs previously. So that is the Cranefly. Just get it up. There you go. A very capable fighter. I don't see this having any troubles with anything like drones. Ground troops, not a problem. That Gatling cannon underneath is going to do a really good job on ground targets, while you can use the main miniguns to kind of focus on things in the air. So it's a good combination, I feel. So that's it for this episode of the workshop. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in downloading this yourself, do send me a message on the comments below, and I'll upload it for you. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode in a bit.